In the glens of Antrim, there's a story under every stone.
Stories about giants and witches and magic dogs and selkies. The story that I chose was actually told by Kate Murphy. Kate Murphy actually bases the action for her Selkie story in Portrush. The Selkie is a magical being. The Selkies are the seal folk. Being a seal is their natural form, but they can also remove their seal skin and go on land and live as humans. Now, usually they'll only do this temporarily and they have to hide their seal skin somewhere. There's lots of different Selkie stories. Now, I hadn't particularly heard the Portrush one, but there's a tradition of Selkie tales for around about sort of Northern Ireland, Scotland, and the Celtic lands. There's different versions of it. The idea of the cloak came to me very quickly after, just really delving into the story. The idea of the seal who can shed the skin and be a human. There's a magical being there, someone who has two skins. And my background is very much in fashion, garment construction, garment design, costume design, and just the idea of a cloak was just something that came to me very, very quickly. As a child who didn't grow up in the digital age, we grew up with stories and, sitting around the fire and telling ghost stories. In any project, I was always looking for that bit of magic, adding a bit of magic, whereas the magic, Ireland really does have that feeling of romance and legend, and there's a good history of storytelling. There's a wealth of stuff that you can delve into, and I think if you are a creative and you like to interpret, there's colour and texture and pattern in all of those stories, and there's so much there. I feel quite privileged, to be involved in just interpreting one of them.
The story I chose was Alison McFall's The Lighthouse Kitchen Cupboards. Whenever I read the story, I didn't know it was in Rathlin. I just knew it was this lighthouse. And with hers, I could visualise it more. It was drawn towards that one and then picked it and then sort of thought, well, what could I create? Because it was about the kitchen cupboards, so obviously you think of these cupboards and then you're thinking of things in the cupboards, and then it was the blue and white china. I've never read that, just that wee bit. Whenever you think of lighthouses and you're thinking chunky mug with blue and white stripes and things. So I sort of took my own twist to create something a bit more contemporary. Whenever you read the story, it's very practical. It was about these lighthouse keepers in their day-to-day life. For me, to recreate Alison's story was to create something functional. So I automatically sort of went towards plate, the mug, the bowl, things that they would use in day-to-day lives. Still keeping with the blue and white that was mentioned in the story as well, like the blue and white china. So sort of wanted to go, white clay body and then some sort of imagery because of the lighthouse. Then whenever I visited Rathlin, I went over to Alison and we seen all the different things and all the stories and the history that she was able to tell you about the island and the lighthouse keepers and their lives and how important it was over on the island on Rathlin. Like, it was very big to them. From those photographs that I took on the day we went over in the visit, then I was able to then create them into the transfer imagery for the pieces. So it's taken creating something everyday, functional, but also aesthetically through the images and keeping with that blue and white theme as well.
I chose a story from the project called The Spanish Armada Tree, which I'd actually written myself. It was a monologue or a recitation. They agreed that I could use my own story as inspiration. I've just always been fascinated with the whole Spanish Armada story. It's just something that's been with me all my life. And of course, it's just on my doorstep, and the backdrop is the beautiful Antrim coastline. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me, to be honest. In my pitch to the Northword project, I said I would write a song. And I said that my creative process would be to write a story first, from which I would draw the images and the ideas for the song. I suppose I'm primarily a storyteller. Even in my songwriting, I'm a storyteller, and so again, to have that backstory in place, well, then it just makes the whole creative process flow much more easily from my point of view. I have been writing since I was a young teenager. Stories, recitations, poems, and latterly then songs. It's just something I don't know how it started or what inspired me to start writing. It's just something that I've always done. I hope that the finished piece will shed some light on this amazing piece of our local history. I also really am passionate about bringing our natural environment or coastline or culture or folklore to a wider audience. And so I really hope that I can develop this into a bigger show that I can tour with. That's the end goal. When the Northword project is all over, I hope that I can develop a show that I can take on the road.
So the story we have chosen is The Witch's Stone by Audrey Kyle. In popular culture, the idea of witchcraft and magic seemed to be having a real uprise. We were then kind of seeking out things that are of our land, and we came across the Island witch trials, then, came across Audrey's story, and just thought it would be something really fun and interesting to explore musically. We knew that the musical piece that we would come up with would definitely have a lot of synths involved.
Yes, we don't normally include a harp, but Claire can play the harp, and we thought that would help draw out this traditional feeling.
And there was something nice with kind of fusing the old time world of harp and the Celticism and mysticism and the vocals, and fusing it with the real modern electronic synths. Then something really interesting came through that kind of mixing.
It makes quite a soundtracky element, I think.
Yes.
Marrying the two. For this, we started with the tune. We start our story and she's running to try to get to this witch's stone. So we wanted people to feel that sense of pace, that sense of heartbeat, that kind of rushing. So we started with trying to make that rhythm happen so that when you're listening to it, you feel that same thing. Isla McGee is right there on the coast. We tried to make our song feel like the coast through the drums. Like at the end, we have a lot of just going crazy on the cymbals and making these like crashing waves.
Within Voxen there would be hints at feminism and some elements of activism, and the idea that we're through the witch's stone digging up the past and bringing kind of hidden history to life, because there are those kind of cornerstones that run underneath all of the projects. That's what gives us the push and the drive for it to be a thing. We want these stories to be told, and the themes to be discussed, and we want to bring shed light on certain things.
So it's storytelling. That's why we do it.
It is storytelling.
The story I chose was How the Salmon Became King of the Fish, and it was submitted by Kate Murphy. and it's about Manannán MacLir, the Celtic god of the sea, and it tells a story as to how he was the king of the sea, but he wasn't a very good ruler and he wasn't a very good leader. And we have a wonderful statue of him in Benevena, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty. Although the statue's there, people don't really know who he is. So again, I wanted to kind of raise awareness of who he is and our local areas. In the story, Manannán MacLir didn't look after the sea, and I feel today we're still not looking after our seas. If we go walks on our local beaches, you see sea plastic washed up. We have a huge issue with people discarding litter and not recycling. So I felt that I could retell this story and bring in relevant issues that we face today. With this particular story, I decided to produce a textile piece and little paper puppets, but very much focusing on illustrations that will go into a children's book. We live in such a wonderful area and we have so many wonderful stories to pass down, and we really should be making more of those. And I suppose that's really important to me, that anything I do has an educational slant on it, so that any art or that I produce, or any pieces that's interacted with, and there's a purpose, and the purpose is to learn. So I hope they learn the story and they learn about the locations, but they also learn about the wonderful species of sea life we have on our shores, whilst also creating awareness of plastic waste, microplastics, and the issues that our sea and our coastlines are currently facing.
The story is from the Spanish Armada tree by Colin Irwin. I chose this story because I had been asked to make some pieces for the church from the Spanish Armada tree when it blew down. The ship, starting off the piece with it being shipwrecked in the storm, cast up on the rocks and the waves lashing in at it. The sailors maybe casting their anchor down and the rope, but it going really nowhere. I used this piece because I thought even the shape of the base itself was wave-like. The sailor had been washed up and been taken to Cairn Castle to be laid to rest. Then I thought the bird sort of, the new life that came from the tree and the seed. The rope was actually a bent branch. When I whittled it down, I probably should have started with a thinner branch, but it was maybe that diameter, when I put it through the bandsaw, and then I carved around, to make it look like a rope. Lucky enough where the knot was on the tree, the bit of branch itself. That's probably one of my favourite parts. I don't honestly know how many hours I put into it. I didn't catalogue, how long it took me, but I know some of the pieces, that was my third attempt at the sails. I wanted to keep the bark on the lower edge, to look like the cloth, the anchors as well. Some of the things weren't just a first attempt. Most of it I done once, but it took me probably 10 times longer thinking about it than it did actually doing it. I'm going to donate it to Port Ballantrae. There's a visitor centre in the village where they have a lot of Armada stuff. Instead to legend, I just thought it was a nice wee title to put onto it. Obviously the tree became a legend, as time passed and people talked about it. I had to say I really like it myself, and I'm glad that they're accepting it. They were delighted whenever I said to them they could have it, and so it's nice that it's going somewhere, and other people will get to enjoy it, and look at it and think hopefully, they'll like it as well,